This is the Prestigious Initiative, and these are the points. I'm Chris Kent, and I'm joining Chris Bean. Hello, Mr. Bean.
Hello, sir.
Let's talk about your conversation with Alexis Hasselberger. What are your first thoughts of this?
We were just talking here in between the show that it was cool to have that conversation because it brings me back to some of our earlier episodes that we did on this podcast where we talked about productivity and time management. And so it was really interesting to kind of relive those things, speaking to somebody that lives those things and helps other people with those things. And so that was very, very cool to have that conversation indeed.
Yes, sir. So right off the bat, we kind of started immediately. Well, not immediately. We heard a little bit of Alexis' story and where she came from and how she got to kind of where she is. But then we started diving into productivity. And so a few tips that she had about productivity. First of all, knowing yourself and your patterns. So we talked about if you're someone who's more productive in the morning or more likely to do something in the morning, develop your system around that time. Or if you are someone who loves to sleep in and likes to be more active at night, develop your system around that time. Because I think it's easy to see what other people are doing and what people are saying. Get up at 4:30 in the morning and go do all this stuff, and then you'll be done by 9 o'clock. Well, if you hate getting up at 4:30 in the morning, maybe it's not a great system for you. And so find out what works for you, knowing your patterns, first of all. Then a couple other tips she had were to write things down, to take those things and break them into parts. Be realistic about what you're trying to achieve in some of your tasks. She referenced this literally as task realism. Plan out what you're going to do in advance before you actually do it. And then she also talked about developing or discovering your off ratio. So if you think that it'll take you an hour to do something, but it actually takes you an hour and a half, you know that you are probably more likely to underestimate your time by half an hour. So when you go, hey, I think it'll take an hour to do this. Let me block an hour and a half. Or I think it'll take an hour and a half to do this. Let me block out 2 hours, because based on the ratio and the way you overestimate or underestimate, that's probably what it'll take anyways too. So those are just a few tips that she started off with on some productivity. And what do you think about some of those things?
Yeah, I think that, of course, knowing yourself is so important because, she talked about not only just your chronotype, meaning, the time you wake up versus, when you're most alert through the day, but, being able to kind of structure your environment so that you can be in that work zone. She mentioned that, she probably couldn't do deep work at a coffee shop with all the people talking and stuff around her. She needs to have the headphones in with the brown noise so she can, dedicate her time to that task at hand. But on top of that, with that coupled with, forgive me, what was the next point you had said after that?
I talked about knowing your patterns, writing things down.
Writing things down, right? Yeah, because your mind is very good at having ideas, not very good at keeping ideas.
Maybe should have wrote that down. Huh?
Yeah. David Allen. We talked about David Allen, he's the author of Getting Things Done. Excuse me, and that is really where he talks about that. Is your mind is really good at having the ideas. And it'll have idea and have an idea and have an idea, but then you'll quickly lose them if you don't write them down. And so having a dedicated place where you are writing those things down is so important. But then, of course, you want to be able to plan your day out. And she talked about the benefit of writing your tasks down and then planning your day out is tremendous and probably over what most people think it actually is, because if you are not writing your things down and you're having all these ideas or these tasks and you're trying to keep them in your head mentally, and then you're not planning out your day for the things that you have to do or the things you want to do, then number one, your brain is going to be stuck, like all gummed up with all the things that you want to get done or have to get done, all the tasks that you have. And then you are at everybody else's whim as far as the day goes because you have no structure to the day because there's no plan. And so taking the time to write those things down in a dedicated place, whether that's on pen and paper or in some sort of task management app, and then to plan your day out so that you can facilitate those tasks that you have, and then also the things you want to get done. So helpful. Yeah, absolutely.
And moving into a little bit more about productivity, we were working with Alexis's definition of productivity, which is doing what you intend to do. So when you're writing those things down, breaking them into parts, planning your day, being productive is doing XYZ, 1, 2, 3 on that list, getting it done, not how many things can I possibly do in this day? Because as we talked about a little bit later, it's not sustainable. If you're setting yourself up for 100 things and you stay up till 1 a.m. doing it, well, then you're going to be burning out very quickly, I would imagine, because it's not sustainable to be working that much and that long. So we talk about breaking it down. Also, you know, reducing and being realistic, which is something she mentioned more than once, being realistic about what you can get done. So let's say you have 25 things on a list. Well, let's actually break this down and pick 5 of the top things that need to get done that I know I can do within the certain amount of time, and then do those 5 things. Boom, you're productive because you finished those 5 things. If you have that list of 25 things and you only get those same 5 things done, there's 20 things undone. You're going to feel much less productive because you didn't finish, 4 times what you thought you could finish. So being realistic about it is also helpful in your productivity. And so back to that example as well, if you wake up and you stay up all night doing something, you're going to lose out on some sleep. And that was one of her number 1 tips to help you be productive. And she mentioned, the idea that if you lose an hour of sleep, you're 1 hour in sleep debt. It's the equivalent of having 1 alcoholic beverage. And so let's say you need 6 hours of sleep, you only sleep 3. Well, you're three drinks in trying to get all this stuff done. And I'm sure that we can agree with her thinking that there's many things that we wouldn't do 3 drinks in that we probably shouldn't do on a sleep debt. And so that's a big thing of being productive, is making sure you're taking care of yourself, whether that be through sleep, through exercise, through proper nutrition, or just, what was it? We just talked with, we just talked with, Martin. Yeah, Martin. I wanted to call him Mitch, but that's not his name. So we just talked to Martin, and one thing he said is, what did he say? Non-productive activity, or I forget how he worded it, but basically the idea of doing things that are quote unquote fun, or doing things that help give you fulfillment. I think that's another part of taking care of yourself, is having the time to do things that kind of refill you and things that are fun for you, things that you enjoy, along with everything else that I just said, to take care of yourself, to help you be more productive during the times you're trying to be productive.
And in asking, what can people do to be more productive? I thought it would be foundational to establish a baseline of what productivity means. Now, like she said, and everybody knows this, is everybody has different assumptions of what productivity is. Lots of people think being productive is doing more things than everybody else is. Well, maybe that's not actually what productivity means. So being able to have a clear definition on that, which is doing the things that you said you were going to do when we're going to do them, that is a much better definition of what productivity actually means. And not only that, but is actually something that people can do something about. Because like she said, if you have 25 things on your list and you only get 5 of those done, you're not going to feel too great about that. You weren't very productive. But if you have 5 things on your list and you get 6 of them done. Oh, I added one. Did you see that? You have 5 things on your list, you get 6 of them done, or even 5 of them done. 5 of them done, you're like, all right, I did everything. You get 6 of them done. Wow, I went overboard. I did an extra thing today. Excuse me. But that is, having a clear definition of that is so helpful. And I think that is not the definition that is prescribed, quote unquote, by everybody. Productivity is said to be do more things than everybody else. How can you do more? Do more. It's not doing more. It's doing the things that you said you were going to do. And being able to schedule your day to facilitate those things getting done. And of course, breaking those larger tasks into smaller tasks is monumental in making sure that happens, because it's so often you have a task that's like, I need to get a new washing machine. Okay, great. I need to get a new washing machine, dishwasher, not dishwasher, to wash my clothes. Okay, great. Well, in order to do that, really, I can't just go to the store. I want that one. Probably you need to do at least a little bit of research. So you need to research what you got. There's got to be some sort of time frame on this, because if you don't have a washing machine to wash your clothes, you might be running out of clothes soon, unless you can just go to the store and buy new clothes every day. Most people don't have that luxury. And then so there's a time element involved, but then also there's a delivery element involved, because you very likely aren't going to be able to go to the store, put it in your car, drive home and get it in. And then there's an install, like that simple thing of, maybe it's not so simple, but as we discovered, but getting a new washing machine, clothes, to wash your clothes, there's several steps involved in that. And being able to actually think about those, anticipate those things, and put them on your list is so important, because you can't have in one day get a new washing machine. Well, you might be able to do some research and pick one out and then go to the store and buy one, but you're very likely not going to get it delivered to your house and then get the old one out and then get the new one installed and be able to use it all in the same day. Probably not, maybe, but in my experience, that's not how that works. Having done that previously, that's not how that works. There's some extra things you have to do, and I think the fault of many people is not only do they not think about the task well enough to incorporate those other things, they underestimate, like she said, they underestimate the time requirement for that. I'm going to get a new washing machine. You block an hour out for that. Okay, well that's that's a gross injustice to your time and the opportunity for you to get a new washing machine, because it just doesn't work like that. So being able to actually think about those things, to parse those tasks into smaller tasks and be able to actually complete those is essential to maintaining a productive day.
Yes, sir. That kind of moves into the next thing I was going to talk about, which is some systems to reduce stress. But going back to a little bit more about productivity, another thing that's helpful in productivity that we mentioned is modulating your environment. So you brought up earlier too, it's hard for her to work in a loud, busy coffee shop. It's hard for her to be at home when her kids and family are home and they're being loud. She needs, a more quiet, stable environment. And, that we have talked about several times, having certain areas for certain things as well. So your environment, being in your reading chair, being in your studying chair, being in your working chair, being in your, whatever it is, having a certain area and only doing that one thing in that area to help put yourself in that mindset. And you're literally controlling that environment of where you get that thing done. And then on top of that, too, we also mentioned taking breaks. And so we talked about the importance of taking breaks. And something that kind of was a through line through everything that Alexis said is, again, we mentioned it earlier, finding what works for you, because what works for me might not work for him. What works for him might not work for somebody else. And she talked about, fitting your attention span to the breaks that you take. We kind of threw out the Pomodoro effect and the prescribed method of taking the breaks or whatnot, but that might not work for you. So rather than doing it the way you read it online, adjust it. Still take breaks, but adjust it to your attention span, what you can handle. Give yourself some time to step away while still thinking about going back to that work and continuing that work. And again, taking those breaks along with modulating your space can also be helpful in increasing your productivity.
Yeah, and of course, we've talked about this previously, but we did it again here today, is when you are modulating your space, as you say, you're doing your different work in the different areas of your house or whatever. It can be as simple as at your dining table, you have 3 chairs, and one chair is where you go and that's where you eat dinner at. And another chair is where you go and that's where you answer emails at. Another chair is where you go to do your reading at, your studying. And so that's all you need. You just need to work around the table. And maybe you just take that chair, instead of sitting in that spot where it's normally at, you offset it, 10 degrees or 15 degrees, 25, whatever it is. And that's enough to signal for your mind that, okay, you're in that type of mode right now, even though you're in the same chair because it's facing a different direction. That's enough to create that space, that atmosphere for you. I think that is really something I have found tremendous value for and so helpful in lots of different areas.
We also touched on kind of dealing with or breaking through procrastination. And so Alexis mentioned 2 different types of blockers when it comes to your productivity. She talked about emotional or mental kind of blockers, and then tactical/practical kind of blockers. And so emotional and mental, maybe whatever you're doing is tied to something that had a negative outcome before in the past. And so you're afraid of doing it, whether consciously or unconsciously, because of the negative thing it's tied to or associated with and tied to that you experienced before. And then also the tactical or practical blocker of something you physically, I physically don't know how to do this thing. And so I'm not going to start because I don't know how to do it, and how to kind of work through that. We talked about breaking the tasks into easy next steps, as she called idiot proofing it. So, we talked about some people that might struggle more than others is, all right, first step, open the laptop. Second step, turn the computer on. Third step, open the document. Fourth step, write the title, whatever it is, you just those steps, next thing, and making them super easy. It's not hard to open your laptop. It's not hard to turn it on, but then you follow that. And then we also tied in some ideas from Atomic Habits and how, making those steps easy and providing the least resistance to getting something done is going to make you more likely and make it a lot easier to get something done, because everybody can open a Word document. Everybody can type a word or two. It's something it's easy to do. And so breaking those things down again that we mentioned earlier really is important, or can be useful when dealing with procrastination and trying to get yourself to start a task or an activity.
And it might seem silly a little bit to break the task down that far. But what that'll do is that'll allow you to have those wins early on. And so you can check that off. And everybody knows you check that box on your task list. That's an endorphin rush because you did something. I opened the laptop. Pow. Good. Turn it on. What was already on? Even better. Pow. Open Word. Pow. And you're checking those lists. Again, it seems really silly to do it that way, to break it down that far. But sometimes that is what you need. Now, to say that you have to do that every single time you do that task, maybe not. Maybe you're the type of person, you do that a handful of times, you see, okay, it actually isn't so hard. You can move past that. Maybe you're the type of person you need that, and so you know that that's the type of person you are. So you got to check those boxes on those small things. And with procrastination, another thing that we talked about, she mentioned that people come to her and they tell her that they are procrastinators. They identify as somebody who procrastinates, and being able to shift that mindset away from being a procrastinator into somebody who is not a procrastinator. Shift your identity from I procrastinate. I am a procrastinator to I am not a procrastinator. That, being able to see that shift will be tremendous in the output of that individual, because if they only see themselves as somebody who procrastinates, and whether that's a mask that was given to them by somebody else, or one that they themselves willingly put on and tell people about, regardless, if they see that as who they are and what they are, then it's going to be very difficult for them to move away from that. So you have to shift your mindset from somebody who procrastinates to somebody who gets stuff done. And if you're the type of person who gets stuff done, then guess what you're probably going to be doing? Getting stuff done, which is what you want. And so, all of these things are all different ways to deal with the concept of procrastination. Everybody procrastinates in different ways. Everybody has their own take and ways to experience and move past that. But I think that those tools that she provided in the episode are very helpful starting points, if not ending points even, on that journey.
And again, that ties into the main idea that we talked about, is you're going to have to find out what works for you. There's a lot of tips and tricks that we can give you, but you're going to have to personalize it for yourself. We talked about the multitasking myth and how we actually don't multitask the same way we think we do. And she mentioned too that, when she's trying to focus on one thing and she's getting distracted by other things, she's developed a mantra for herself to help her stay on focus, which can be different for each person. But, when you find yourself starting to lose focus, you can say, hey, get back to what you were doing, get back to the task at hand, get back to whatever it is, and develop a mantra for yourself when you know that you're going to find yourself getting off topic or, distracted by something you're doing. And then we talked about, again, a little recap of almost everything here. We talked about being realistic and maintaining your productivity, setting boundaries around your time. I won't do this after this time, or, hey, I'm going to take the weekend off. I'll come back to this on Monday, and letting other people know that too, so they can know to expect, hey, Mr. Bean doesn't work on the weekends. So I'll send him a message on Friday. I won't expect an answer back till Monday. And part of that's on you. You need to structure yourself and conduct yourself in a way that people understand that boundary. If it really is an emergency, they can reach you at an X, Y, or Z way, but set yourself up those boundaries so you don't find yourself burning out. And then changing the structure of your daily life. Again, if you find you're most productive in the morning, schedule and structure your life around being productive in the morning. And then throughout the day, kind of adjust it to things that work for you, things that don't work for you. If you have other commitments that you can't do something at a certain time, then don't schedule yourself to do things during those times. Don't expect yourself to do something when you have to do something else as well. And of course, we talked about, again, defining productivity and not just being efficient in the sense that you are doing more things, but be efficient in doing the things that you said you're going to do and help with that productivity. Again, kind of a recap of almost everything we discussed with Alexis, but great to hear her insight. She obviously has put a lot of work, effort, thought, and practice into time management, productivity, efficiency. And, this conversation flew by, but I think it's because we were just in a rhythm of learning all this knowledge and bouncing ideas back and forth from each other. And I'm just really glad that she could be here and share some of that with us.
Yeah, agreed. And like I said in the beginning, it was cool to talk to her and link a lot of the things that she was saying with the things that we had talked about earlier on the first handful of episodes on this podcast. And so that was really, really cool to kind of go back down those things and bring those things back up because, of course, productivity, time management, building habits, daily practices are so helpful and important to sustaining who we are and how we operate doing anything that we do. And so having an established way to do these things, whether that be, you take the weekends off. And so you have like she has an automatic email that goes out on Thursdays now that says, hey, I'm not in an office until Monday. If you need something, whatever. But letting people know that and being able to structure your day like that isn't accessible for everybody. I totally understand that. But if you can work those things, some of those key concepts into how you do operate or how you are allowed to operate in your day, I think is very helpful, very beneficial to being more productive. And again, productivity, as she says, is doing the things that you say you're going to do. And what a good way to think about productivity. That was my biggest takeaway for that today. And that's not something I had heard of before. So doing the things that you say you're going to do, that is being productive.
Make sure you follow us on social media. You can find the podcast at Prestigious Pod.
You can find me, Chris Bean, at Chris Bean Official.
You can find me, Mr. Kent, at Mr. Chris R. Kent.
And if you like our content and would like to subscribe to our email, you can do that via our social media or on the website.
Make sure you also join our Discord for exclusive content and personal interactions.
If you would like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life by me, Chris Bean, you can do that by reaching out on one of my social medias or by emailing the podcast at prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com.
Those are the points. Make sure you come back next week for even more points and another great conversation. Until next time, I'm Chris Kent.
And I'm Chris Bean.